you're a single parent income, it's nearly impossible to survive.
Thousands of Idaho students were identified as homeless last school year.
A lot of times it's an invisible problem.
School districts are required to count and support K-12 kids experiencing homelessness under a little-known federal law.
So that law helps, no matter what, our kids to be in school, and then it provides the resources that they need to keep in school.
A law meant to give them an equal shot at education.
My kids wouldn't be the kids that they are if I didn't have the program or the help or anything.
While most Idaho school districts are doing their best to ensure student success, it can be challenging to identify homeless kids.
It's easy to get lost in the cracks.
And there's not much money or incentives out there to help them. So it's likely hundreds more unhoused kids are undercounted and unsupported.
Our reporting and our data reflects that there's only X amount, but in reality it's such a larger problem. It's really hard to address that and find a solution that's appropriate.
Over the next 3 nights, 7 investigators will be covering the growing problem of Idaho students winding up homeless. Not many people know this, but American school districts are required to identify and help these kids.
Tonight, in part 1 of our series, Idaho's Uncounted Kids, we introduce you to some local families who are benefiting from the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act.
Hi, little mama.
What are your hopes for your kids in the future?
Honestly, right now, my main concern is them getting the best education that they can. Come on. Just to better themselves. Okay, hold on with them. Because I don't want them living the life I live. Come on. I don't want them living the poverty life.
But more kids, like Tara Smallwoods, are living that life in Idaho. Last school year, more than 9,100 public and charter school students in pre-K through 12th grade were identified as homeless, up 1,300 over the past 5 years. That's about 3% of all Idaho students. The State Department of Education says children with disabilities, migrants, and English learners are disproportionately impacted.
A lot of times that could be contributed to just the economic climate that we're in. I think we're also doing a better job at identifying students through our training, through our outreach.
Exactly. Amber Rains.
I needed a stepping stone to really learn what stability looked like.
And Jessica Kaufman.
I was in a place where I was couch hopping and trying to figure it out.
Live in City Lights transitional housing.
Do it. Just be brave.
And each have kids in the public school system.
What led you to City Light? Toxic relationships, my addiction. I had gotten a DUI and went to jail, and then came here after that.
Do it again.
Their children had to move schools multiple times, causing more instability by disrupting their education and development.
My son sort of lost the passion to go to school because he just, he didn't really want to deal with it.
But she says her daughter moved schools and thrived.
My daughter was a little younger, and so for her, things were just a little easier to adapt.
Statistics show kids who experience homelessness at any point in their childhood score more poorly on standardized tests than others, have a higher need for special education, are more likely to fall behind, and are less likely to graduate high school.
It's really easy to get off track and lose hope.
A Center for Public Integrity analysis found graduation rates for unhoused Idaho students lagged more than 20% behind the average graduation rate. Jessica's son did not wind up like most others in his position.
Yeah, he graduated, yeah.
She credits that in part to a federal law requiring public schools to assist homeless students to break the cycle of poverty.
So McKinney-Vento is the federal law that ensures that students experiencing homelessness have access to education.
Created in the late 80s, the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act requires districts to identify all unhoused students and accompanied youth.
How do you identify homeless students?
So by law, every school district has a McKinney-Vento liaison, and during enrollment, they have a housing questionnaire that they send out, and so families can complete that housing questionnaire.
The definition of who counts as homeless is broad. It means anyone who lacks a, quote, fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. It includes students who are unsheltered, staying in cars, in substandard housing, living in shelters or transitional housing, and in hotels and motels. But the vast majority of students identified as homeless are living doubled up with friends or family. Once they're identified, the school must waive enrollment requirements like immunization records, refer families to services, support kids academically, and provide transportation so they can stay in the school they attended before becoming homeless.
Just phone calls from the social worker is where it began. If there was anything that they could do to support me. Offering for food, gas vouchers, the McKinney-Vento busing to keep her in the same school district even though we moved to a different one. Back to school clothing.
Through the law, the U.S. Department of Education also gives states money based on a complex formula. Then, school districts can apply through their State Department of Ed for competitive subgrants to implement the program at the district level.
They would get help with sports that they wanted to do, which was really helpful because I was going through my program.
Are you talking to me? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pretty much anything we needed.
I slept okay.
Anything to ensure unhoused kids stay in school and have a fair shot at a future.
I think it's kids that graduate from high school with either a GED or high school diploma are 3.5 times less likely to experience homelessness in adulthood. So we really, really want to push them and retain them and get them to that finish line there.
Without the assistance, it would have been really difficult to navigate all the things to keep them included in the education system for sure.
While Idaho school districts and all American school districts are required to ensure students experiencing homelessness have the same access to education, it's really challenging to identify them and to serve them.
Which is leading to hundreds of unhoused Idaho kids going uncounted, as you mentioned, and unsupported, sadly.
So if we don't have accurate data, it's hard to find an appropriate solution for that.
Tomorrow on the news at 10, 7 Investigates explores why kids aren't being identified and why dozens of school districts are missing out on those subgrants and those resources that can help them.
And then we'll take you inside one district to show how they're working hard to prevent students from falling through the cracks.